Welcome to another episode of the VCF Musketeers, the podcast for all businesses utilizing or planning to utilize VMware Cloud Foundation. In today's episode, I'm proud that I have Christopher Kusek, who actually runs its own series around VCF, and he's going to tell us most likely a bit about that as well. Welcome, Chris. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself and tell a bit about the other series you are doing as well?
Absolutely. Thank you. My name is Christopher Kusek. I run the Architect's Edge. It's a webinar, newsletter, insight articles, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Shared as an email newsletter and available on LinkedIn and YouTube. So all that kind of content that we put out on a regular basis in order to make better for those. One of the ways I find it's most useful is I'll put stuff out there that I want to find later. Like, oh, where did I find that? Where did I put that? Oh, I put it over there. Great. So it makes it easier for me to share with someone where the thing went. And also makes it easier for me to find it when I need to go find it again. A little bit about me. I'm going into my 18th year as a VMware V expert. And I've been working with VMware since 98, 99. It's been a few minutes. So 25, 26, 27 years. I don't know. It's been a few minutes, but I'm coming into my 5th anniversary as a VMware Broadcom employee. So I'm part of the inner fold as opposed to being on the outside as I have been for decades.
Yeah, I actually started with VMware Workstation 1.0. I should potentially have kept the box from back then, but it's been quite a long period, and I think we could actually fill 15 episodes with just what we have been looking into with all of that in the past. And we shared before the episode a few stories, is like what we see currently going on in the market, where people just don't actually necessarily immediately see what they had with VMware up until the point where they lose it. But let's maybe start with something is, can you give us your 60 seconds or whatever elevator pitch on why every enterprise should use VMware Cloud Foundation for their private cloud?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a thing. Every organization may be already using VMware Cloud Foundation today, maybe in its most basic bare underpinnings, but they may not. So whether you have fully adopted the entire stack or you're running on a relatively naked vSphere model where you're just running as a hypervisor, right? In most cases, you're probably entitled to the rest of the stack with reservations. Oh, I don't want to do that because I'm doing this other thing. But the real skinny on it is the real ultimate case. Wait, back in the day, there was always a VMware on VMware was always kind of a showcase. Customer zero, right? VMware and VMware was always running. What's kind of the way that they were always like eating their own dog food, right? And the people use the term drinking your own champagne. At Broadcom, it's a little different story because VMware is Broadcom. Absolutely. 100%. VMware is Broadcom, right? We can all agree to that. Broadcom is not VMware, though. Broadcom is a $1.8 trillion chip manufacturer who needs business to work every single time and every single day, which with 30-some divisions, one of which happens to be VMware. So Broadcom's mission is make sure my product works well. And pre-acquisition, they were a naked vSphere user, right? They used it just like all these other organizations. And we're like, hey, I'm just running the hypervisor is good enough. And within literal months, and this is all, there's videos out there and white papers and such that have been published on this, is within literal months of acquisition, I call it the hair club from Effect. They like the product so much they bought the company, right? Is they started to realize the value of VCF, not just a naked vSphere type of approach. And that resulted in significant reduction in cost, significant reduction in time to actually go to market to make these things available, significant increase in availability of resources, all those things, because they were doing things the way everyone's like, oh, I can just get by doing things the way ever I want to. But a very large company who really needed to run IT correctly, right? It wasn't IT as a novelty. It was IT as a function of running the business. And that's what was important to them is this serves one purpose, and it's to run my operational business. And yeah, literally months. And we're talking millions of cores is what they're using in the environment, right? They're not shy about how they're using it. And they started getting demonstrable and massive value, to which white papers and videos were shared around that. And that's
And
that's
it's
kind of the part. They as customer zero, but not using things that don't work or experimenting or eating dog food. They're eating McDonald's, refined and works every single time. It's got to be consistent, because if it isn't, it's not going to be part of the business.
And the interesting part out of that, one of our team architects was actually working on that implementation as well. It's like that was kind of interesting before the acquisition started this whole project, and it was interesting to see is like how all of that was built up, and the pure size of it
Mm-hmm.
is whenever people come and my team and we have been doing some of the most craziest VMware implementations throughout all these years with thousands of hosts. Whenever someone comes, it's like, yeah, but maybe our infrastructure is too big. It's like, I don't think so.
No.
It's like I have seen enough very, very large implementations, and that is where the value is. But it's not only if you have a large implementation, which is, I think, the biggest misconception at the moment when we look at VCF, is many goes like, yeah, but we are not a huge enterprise. We don't need hundreds of hosts and stuff like that. I would even argue, and maybe you can correct me there if I'm wrong, but I would even argue, especially for smaller businesses,
Mm-hmm.
VCF is even so much more useful, because when we look at VCF 9 now, the simplicity of the rollout is like how simple it is to build your own SDDC. And trust me, I have made a good living as a consultant in architecture company out of building this in the past, out of all the little building blocks, and try to glue them all together and make them work together. It's like, this is something I can train someone very quickly on how to utilize and how to get value out of VCF. So I would argue it's like, it's even more important if you are a smaller business and if you are actually operating workloads for a business reason, to go with VCF, because it's going to take a lot away of the headache. You don't need to, especially if you are only running virtualization, which is in many small, medium businesses, they only have a bunch of virtualization hosts. It's like all the network complexity goes away, all the storage complexity goes away, because we can put you all of that into a little box, and you have one management user interface. And yes, here and there, you now need to still actually move out. But that's at least my personal opinion, is like VCF should even be more used in the small scale than in the large scale.
Well, and a touch on that is, and this is the diverse difference between VCF 9 and VCF 5 and earlier, right? Because if you have that 5.1, right, not 5.2, the latest release in the 5 family was 5.2.2, right? not in the 5.2, but in the 5.1 and earlier, it was very similar to how the VCF message was for the past decade, right? Do it my way, only my way. You got to follow my rules. Anytime you want to do anything, it's going to be a forklift. It's going to be an arduous experience. And part of 5.2, but especially 9 said, you know what? Let's meet you where you're at. You're using, you know what? You couldn't get on the road of VSAN at the time, and you bought, third-party storage, and your 3-tier storage model. Awesome. Continue using that. Oh, but VCF requires VSAN. I want you to use VSAN, right? There's operational benefits. You're going to see, financial savings, but because of 9, but I'm not forcing you to do it. Whereas in 5, 5.2 and prior was, you must run VSAN. All these things are absolute requirements. And it's something that I talk about that often, because I keep getting told, oh, no, you require me. And I'm like, nope. Yes, that was true. It absolutely was true. But as of June 17th, 2025, nope. A lot of these things are preconceived things, that something you read on Reddit, maybe. It's some kind of FUD that's being messaged around. And again, there are benefits to doing, hey, I adopt VSAN, I adopt all these different type of approaches. Absolutely. But also, like, oh, I've got some NetApp in here. I got some Pure Storage. I got some Isilon. Great. Use that, right? I'll give you a reason to use VSAN, but I'm not going to force you like, oh, but to adopt, you need to forklift, replace all your hardware. I'm not going to go and, do I want you to? If it makes sense and if it's the right time, if your stuff's 5-7 years old or whatever, sure, replace that. I just bought this 5 minutes ago. Oh, okay. Well, let's get you to operational efficiency in your virtual infrastructure in the areas we can. We can make your compute more efficient, right? We can So this is a part, right? Storage would say, all right, that's going to live over there until you're ready for that, in your proper cycle. Networking is a lot of people like, yeah, I'll adopt all the stuff, but not NSX. Like it's that's more religion than anything, right? The apprehension of NSX adoption has largely been a religious debate more than it has been a technical debate. Okay, yes, there was a technical part around it, and around the Nicira acquisition going back a decade or so. Yeah, there was absolutely technical elements to it. But these days, don't think of it as NSX, like VCF NSX. Think of it as VCF networking, right? And especially with enhanced data path, we're like, ooh, look at that new thing. Like, well, if you mean it came out in 5.1 of VCF, which is several years back, yeah, new, but otherwise, but it being enabled and enforced as a out of box default, it's just use NSX as that VDS plus, right? Because that's kind of the thing. Because that's, and I run this, and these are giant enterprises. All right, sweet. You want to adopt a VCF? Yeah, but I want to do NSX. You at least aren't still using standard switches. Oh no, we're totally using standard switches. Standard switches and really expensive, most likely Cisco networking gear. And with ACI, sweet. You have ACI implemented? Nope. No, we do not. But we're working on it. Like you've been working on that for a decade, man. All right, so I'm not like do what you want to do, but that which has a V in its name, right? Inside that virtual infrastructure, you have the ability to have these pieces cohesively connected, no better tied together than they have been today, and continually getting that further investment. That's actually one of the big things we love out of the Broadcom acquisition was the unification of all the parts and pieces that which became VCF under a single umbrella to make them work well together. Because in the past, it was, yeah, we're all doing our thing. It's all separate divisions doing things separately. And it was not as cohesive as it is today. I'll say that. And I'm a big fan of seeing that adoption, adaptation, and making these things able to be consumed.
I think that's one of the good points. Is like in the old days, VCF was basically more like a gluing kit to make all of these other components together. When we look at VCF 9, it's like it's integration first, and then if it works out of the box as a standalone product, nice. We might not support you there, but if you can make it work, you're bought. But for everything else, it's like it's an integrated solution.
Well, remember, VCF in a way was a mechanism to sell more Dell hardware, right? When we were owned by Dell, right? That's not a knock against that. It's just like, hey, absolutely. Now, I mean, we're owned by Broadcom, another manufacturer, another hardware manufacturer owns you. Yeah, but no, right? Because they're not been like, go sell Broadcom chips. Like, that's not how this works, right? It's a sell Dell, sell Lenovo, sell Huawei, right? Sell Cisco, like Cisco, whatever. Sell all of the different things. We finally are truly in a use whatever compatible in the HCL hardware that happens to be available, as opposed to use whatever you want, but use Dell, right? Again, not a knock against Dell in that relationship. Nor was it a knock against the relationship when it was under EMC, right? Going back in the day. It's just we truly are actually separated and segregated from a hardware vendor when it comes to your availability and choice. And we're seeing that most especially lately with the VxRail, a stepping away from it being heavily VxRail hardened and more towards a vSAN ready node, a universal construct that anybody can adopt. So vSAN ready node from Dell versus Lenovo. It's like, oh, choose the vendor of choice as opposed to a different form of vendor lock-in, the kind of things that cloud always like, hey, you go to here and you got flexibility. Like, no, I got cloud lock-in over there. Now I've got, more forms of lock-in in different places.
And I think speaking about lock-in is like the reality is with VCF is like you can run it on-prem, but if you want to run it on a hyperscaler, you can do so too. And I think it's even more flexible now with Broadcom really enforcing is the customer owns the license. There is no lock-in from the vendor anymore, as much as the hyperscalers currently hate that situation because they want to be in the driver's seat completely. But the reality is now that the customer completely owns the license and can completely decide, I want to run this on-prem in my own hardware. I want to go to some just data center, rent some rack hardware, throw it on there, or I can go to a hyperscaler or one of a few 100,000 CSPs. You have all the choices. And on top of all the choices, you also have the tools for the mobility to actually move your workloads around, which is in the old days, HCX was there, but on the other side, it was included in NSX Enterprise, which actually had a price tag to it. And many people said, it's like, yeah, it would be great if we would have HCX, but really, we are not going to buy it. And then you had VMC as a competitive solution, and everybody's like, why do they get that for free and no one else has it? And now all of that is actually balanced. And we see this now is like we just actually had a insurance company in the US, a very large one where many people have seen the ads from, is they are currently, and they can do that alone at the moment, is like they are moving a few thousand VMs from their old data center to a new one. And their timeline for a few thousand VMs is just 3 months, which is like, yeah, I do that with most other platforms, have fun. And they don't have a plan B in reality because that data center will be demolished by end of year, period. It's done. So the bulldozers are already scratching at the wall. So there is no chance for them. So they need to do this. But again, no one is really actually currently in the position and saying it's like, yeah, maybe it doesn't work because we have all the tools. We take this for granted. It's like, I lately had a discussion like a database server, and someone was telling me, it's like, yeah, we can't move a running database server under load. It's like, why can't you? You are probably on the wrong platform if you can't do that, because we have been doing that for years. Is like, yes, there are certain scenarios. It's like, it's maybe not the best ideal, a full-blown transactional database to move that under highest load. Everybody would advise you to try to use a time window where the load is low. But if it's an emergency, if it needs to be done, it can be done. It will take maybe longer, but we can move these things. And that is a huge differentiator. And people just actually, over all these years, I think, have taken all these features by now for VMware for granted. And as some of them actually tiptoe into some of these other waters, they figure out it's like, HA doesn't work out of the box. vMotion doesn't work out of the box. And I need to configure all these networks and all these hosts individually, as you as you pointed out with DVS and things like that. It's like all of that was granted because people were so used, because all of the years is like we came to the point vSphere 7, 8, it's like there was not many more features to invent because the virtualization game was done. It's like everything was virtualized. It was really more like fine-tuning, add a few more hosts, a few more other things here and there. And I think we are now seeing the next iteration with all of that. We also see, and I recorded that in another episode, is what also many people underestimate is in all the talks we had around cloud native. Cloud native is great, but the reality is for many of these enterprises out there who are basically in business for more than 5 or 10 years, they have a hell lot of legacy workload. And that legacy workload needs to operate. That needs to be secure. That needs to have a safe haven to work in. And for some of them, public cloud is not even an option to move that legacy workload into it. And we have that safe spot for them. I mean, I would hope that some of them would actually finally migrate from NT4 or Windows 2003 to something a bit more modern. But at least if you need to finally operate it, potentially VMware is the safest place to have these workloads, because we can then take features like NSX and vDefend and advanced threat protection and microsegmentation, which does not run inside the virtual machine because that doesn't give you the protection. It runs outside of the vNIC so that you are actually fully protected, and we can actually apply that to whatever operating system you are running, because we don't care about the operating system and you have a central platform for all of that. All of these features are there, and that is really why it's so important for modern enterprises to utilize really VCF, because it's nice that some other guy potentially might actually get you a different pricing, but let's also see how that goes in 3 years on renewal, because that's a different story. But VCF is actually, with VCF 9, I would say it's now finally the adults version, which actually finally works out of the box. And it's also, from my point of view, it's the perfect proof of everybody was saying after the acquisition is like, oh, how can you stay with them? Broadcom is going to end R&D and all of these things. Is like, even last year at Explore, I had PMs which I knew for years, which already back then said, is like, look, with Broadcom, we finally see more movement in product development than we have seen for years, because there is finally one vision again. It's one integrated solution which we finally get to. And we are not trying to build an operations manager one for one, some weird NetApp use case where there is one customer on the globe who runs vRealize operations standalone without vSphere and everything else and has a specific adapter. And every development cycle that needs to be tested again. It's like, it's the integrated solution which is front and foremost. And in reality, that is what most customers were begging for. And also what I have seen is like, with Hawk, seeing him go around with customers, like last year at Explore at that Formula One event, it's like he was actively walking to each customer he could find. It's like, did you watch the keynote? What's your problems? How can we solve them? What's the vision? What should we do? And it's like, this is not talking about a company which is not investing in the products anymore, which is just trying to squeeze the last dime out of the customer. It's really about solving actual customer problems. And I would even say it's like VMware in the old days sometimes was more really like this engineering company and not the business outcome company. And now it's a business outcome company. I remember sitting down with I think it was Kit or someone around VMC, and I said, it's like, Kit, can we agree that the biggest business value for VMC is that you can move a running VM workload out of your data center and move it in the cloud without any change? And he said, it's like, yeah, that's truly important. And I said, it's like, why don't we find any of these very important features anywhere as a front and foremost feature set? Because we talk about all the technical features, about the amount of cores and everything else and all these little details. But the most important part for all the customers I have worked with VMC was, is like, can I take my workload from on-prem as is and move it into the cloud without any real big change? And these are the realities what VMware stands for. And I think that's what we now see with Broadcom. It's more about the outcome. What is the business value? What are we generating? How are we really helping customers? And not only the IT guy who likes the blinking lights. It's like, if it's not about that anymore. And I think it's an interesting
theory on that. So shortly after acquisition, we'll call it February of 2024, right? So acquisition occurred in November, right? And then there's a ramp up part, December, January, etc., right? And the February release of ARIA, right? Among many of the components in there, but that really, in prior releases, right? We would have these prior releases, and those releases would be very I don't know, bell of the ball, filled with a whole bunch of stuff that nobody wanted, nobody asked for. You don't know why it's there, right? It's like, why is this feature here? Who's this benefiting? And that first release, we'll call it the first Broadcom release, after acquisition, was 99% customer request features. And I continue to see that iterated on every single iteration and release, a dot release and version, were all things that customers have been asking for, often, in some cases, for years. I personally had AHAs, right? The submission, because you go like VCF, AHA, like those places where you go submit, feature requests. And I had my feature requests that had been sometimes not looked at, sometimes said, no, that we're not going to do that, suddenly be picked up and make it part of the roadmap, actually be part of the pipeline. Things that it's like, this is what my customers have been asking for. This is what I was asking for as a customer. Because, in my time, I was the world's largest customer. And I'm like, these are the things I need. And to see that there's the acknowledgement, the recognition of, and then the actual investment into that was massive. That was the first line of, they're getting it. They're actually doing what VMware was not, right? VMware they were doing stuff, but it was always like, what's going to move the needle at the street? Like, you know what? Hey, I'm a customer today. What are you going to do to help what I need to do today? And Broadcom was meeting right there I'm going to help you I'm going to meet you where you're at. I'm going to give you the resources and tools that you want and that you need today. And hey, we're also going to invest and make those things better for your adoption ready for VCF 9 tomorrow, kind of thing, which is also done today,
And I think it's like VMware was running from my point of view, and I said that in several interviews, is VMware was running a bit into this Sun Microsystems
Mhm.
scenario. It was great from an engineering perspective. In some areas, it was light years ahead on what the market really needed. It's like, think about the Syn client or the Java client Sun Microsystems had. It's like,
Mhm.
that was ahead of everything, but it was just the market was so far not ready for any of these features in many cases. And to a certain degree, in some areas, VMware was running into the same scenario. It was a great engineering company. It developed some of the greatest features, some of the things other companies, even 2023 or 2024, are developing on. And we currently see this as the other ones are trying to catch up with virtualization features, network features, storage features, and all these things. Is It was great from an engineering perspective, but the customer was not necessarily always in focus. And I said that in several interviews. I know now a lot of people actually hate me for that, but in the end, that it's it's a reality. It's like the same as when we give these solutions to the customers to actually solve an actual business problem. It's like, on the other side, we need to build something for these customers in the first place so that they can take it in their business to the point. And in some cases, some of these customers just say, it's like, look, I don't really care if you can put 40,000 VMs into one vCenter because I'm only running 500. And it's great that this is a great feature, but could you have solved the 15 other issues I have?
Let's take it back to the original, right? A lot of people forget about this and take this for granted. Hey, I only have 500 servers. Yeah, but 5 minutes ago, you had 500 servers, 500 pizza boxes in your data center, all running at like 1% utilization. And now you can have four servers, four servers that are running all 500 workloads on it. And suddenly you've reduced all of that iron, all of that maintenance, all that support, all that power and cooling, all of that. And that's just the basic stuff, right? And then going above and beyond that. But people often forget about that. And they're like, well, I can get a hypervisor from anybody. Like, I've done that. Good luck with that. I mean, truly, I'm gonna say, because the number of times that people seen swap over to something else, and then suddenly they take, wow, where's all the stuff that I take for granted, like we've been discussing, right? Is it's like, man, I work a backhoe every day, and now I've got spoons to go dig trenches. I'm like, good luck with that. You go get 1,000 people, maybe you're gonna dig a trench, but I can do that in the afternoon, and I can do that in the morning, right? And just be done and be on to the next thing. And that's kind of the key part on this is, being ready for making your business run operationally today. And that way it frees up your time to go and do other stuff that if you don't have enough time to take care of the key parts of the business, are we stable, secure, available, reliable? If you're not be able to meet those requirements, now how am I going to be? How am I going to be compliant? How am I going to be governed? How am I going to be protected? And above and beyond, how am I going to be integrate all those pieces? If you can't handle the basic parts of it, if a host fails, what happens? Oh, if it's not HA, or if it's not part of the VMware part of the family and a VCF stack, I can't tell you always, right? It's a lot of things could happen. Your workload might be dead forever. Who knows, right? Because there's just too many unknown unknowns. Again, things we absolutely take for granted.
So I see already we could spend hours and hours on all of this. So maybe to come to a closing point. So what would you suggest to a CIO who is on the fence whether they should use VCF or just go somewhere else?
So, number one thing, right? And this is something we all this the number one most unrealized thing. It's all around education. So let's touch on that for a second, okay? Pre Broadcom, VMware had VCF certification, training courses, training classes, all this stuff. We all know about this, right? VMware had a $500 million a year business. Because you take a class that's got 30 people in it, and each person in a seat is 5,000. That right there, that's, let's do math. 5 times 30, 100. That is $150,000 for that 5-day class for those people in that class. And there wasn't one testing center, or there wasn't one training place. There were training places around the world, and they took this massive, it was 500 million plus business of education, training, certification, knowledge, instructor, like all that, and they said that's included in VCF. That's actually the highlight of my this month's November newsletter, is talking all about, did you know that all the education is free? Yeah, the cert test you take at a Pearson VUE or something like that, testing center, you still got to pay for the cert. But that which goes into getting you the knowledge of, hey, I want to learn around VCF. Sweet. Oh, I'd like my networking team to learn about NSX, but I don't want to pay for them to go to a class. That's great. It's now included. When and pulls back to the, wait a minute, you're telling me not just the VI admin, not just a virtual architect, but every employee at the company has an entitlement to take advantage of all of the training, all the hundreds and thousands of hours and all the work that went into create this training and curriculum. All that's available. And the answer is, yeah, all that's completely available. And that education, knowledge, comfort with the things, leveraging holodeck to build out a demo environment or something like that, right? All of that becomes the underpinnings of making sure, am I using my current investment operationally and effectively? Because you're running vSphere today, but are you doing the most you can with it? And without having to go and like, oh, I need to hire a lot of people to be able to take advantage of this. There's that old adage of the CIO talking to the IT manager. The IT manager is like, oh, if I send my employees for training, they might leave. And the CIO is like, yeah, but if you don't, they might stay. And that's kind of the key part in this. Training, education, and adoption comes first with you, because no one's going to make your environment work better than you, and no one understands your environment better than you. And that becomes that initial underpinnings that will allow you to take advantage of all the stuff. Because whether you adopt VCF 9 today or you wait 3 years, you're still running vSphere 8, hopefully not 7, and to support, last month. But you're still running vSphere 8, and there's a lot of stuff in vSphere 8 that you can be taking advantage of today. And that's kind of the key part, is you've got hands on all the knowledge, the learning, the hands-on labs, all that education right there at your fingertips. You're able to take advantage of to get yourself to adoption and consumption and full investment. Because when you're using the platform, suddenly that price seems like, well, this is actually kind of inexpensive. But if you see it as a bare naked hypervisor, like, this is a really expensive hypervisor, like, yeah, but compared to physical servers, is it really? Right. And the reality is, it's like, no, it's still a really sweet deal, even in spite of what you may read out on Reddit.
Thank you, Chris, for doing that. I already see we will potentially do one or two more episodes going forward. I think there's a lot we have to cover. So thank you for today, and I hope to see you again on one of the next episodes.
Absolutely. Thank you.